immigration regulations, the Department of Home Affairs has introduced a new system for visa and permit applications and extensions to be streamlined at dedicated various centres across the country. A few of these offices are currently running in major cities in the country. Now, the plan will be unveiled later on today in RIVONIA, Johannesburg, which is one of the centres. For more on it, we're joined by the Home Affairs Minister himself, Malusi Gigaba. Good to have you, Minister. Thank you very much for being with us this morning.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Okay, so there's a perception that Home Affairs has not been coping with the administrative duties. Is this perhaps the reason for facilitating this type of transaction now for visas?
I think more than anything else, you come up with innovations such as these ones in order to improve your services. Whether you're coping or not, I think the critical question is whether you are able to provide convenient service to your clients, and that's precisely what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, so we've got an outside company now, per se, that's assisting and working on this.
Yes, and the impact of that has already been drastic. In the month of June alone, we had 4,000 applications. We've succeeded to reduce the turnaround times, when in the past, it would have taken 8 weeks between the time the person applies and the time they get their response, and now the people who have applied are receiving their decision. So the people who were dealing with the applications for visas and permits are now, some of them have been deployed to the adjudication process, and that is assisting us to expedite the adjudication. And so we're quite excited with the innovation that we are seeing, and many people are now approaching these visa facilitation centers in order to file their applications, particularly online.
How many facilities are there around the country?
There is going to be 11 facilities around the country. Gauteng and the Western Cape, because of the high volumes which they receive, are going to have 2 facilities each. But this is in addition to the facilities we established already outside the country in high-volume countries such as China, Ghana, Kenya, and other countries on the African continent, including Nigeria. And so we are in the process where we are now establishing the facilities inside the country, and as resources permit, we will expand the facilities that are available outside the country to assist us to expedite the issuance of visas into the country, so that visitors, investors, business people who want to come into the country, including those who are coming on critical skills visas, can be able to be processed quickly.
How is it going to be rolled out? And I suppose the question is, when can the public expect to find them?
The offices are operating. We expected the final office to be operating as of mid-July. And so they are operating now right across the country.
Okay, so they're in full operation now. One of the questions that comes up in these matters is the tendering system. How was this handled?
Well, this was handled, it was an open process. The department had to undertake the process in full view of the fact that the skills for such a process do not exist everywhere else. We are satisfied as the department that we followed all the rules, and anybody who has any ideas about any wrongdoing must come forward, so that we are able to investigate those and take appropriate action. But insofar as we are concerned, we are satisfied that the process was undertaken fairly.
Okay. The cost implications for the system, what are we looking at?
You know, the cost implications for the system are going to be recouped in the process of the fees that people are going to be paying as they apply for visas. So we don't think that it's going to cost the department that much. We think that in the fees that people will be paying, we will be able to recoup the money that we are investing in establishing these facilities. I think at the end of the day, what we are trying to do is to ensure that our clients, particularly foreign nationals, both those who are outside the country and those who are inside the country, are able to get expeditious decisions from their applications.
Yeah. What's the amount, though? What are we looking at, the actual figure?
Well, obviously, the figures are in billions.
Yeah.
And so but it's money that has been budgeted for.
Okay, so it's in the billions, and let's move away from this. Let's just talk about other issues, particularly when it comes to the one issue that's got a lot of people worried about is traveling with children and the new restrictions that were put in. What's happening there?
In actual fact, it's not new restrictions. It's just a new requirement because we're trying to assist in protecting children from trafficking, smuggling, and many of the children are smuggled and trafficked for child pornography purposes. And that is why we've introduced the requirement that if you are traveling with a child, you must be in possession of that child's passport, the unabridged birth certificate, and if you are not the parent of the child, you must be in possession of an affidavit from the parents of the child, which allows you to travel with this child. Now, insofar as the concern which people have raised relates to the time it takes for unabridged birth certificates to be provided, the department is working around the clock to ensure that when this requirement begins to be implemented, we are able to expedite the issue of unabridged birth certificates. The children that have been registered in terms of birth registration and whose details are available on our systems electronically are the ones who are going to be easy to travel with because their details have been automated already. The challenge is with regards to those whose details have not been automated because their parents either had not registered them or for one reason or the other. But we're working around the clock to deal with all of those challenges, and we're convinced that once the systems are given a chance and they begin to be implemented, the glitches and challenges which might and will be experienced in relation to the implementation are going to be overcome.
Okay. Just finally on the visa question, I'm just looking at the time, the visa question. There's certain countries that South Africa needs a visa to visit, and yet they don't need a visa to visit South Africa. Are we going to see some changes in some of our restrictions and some of our regulations for other countries soon?
The same applies to countries which have imposed visa restrictions to South Africa when we have not. For example, to go to Britain, you need to apply for a visa, but to come to South Africa, if you are British, you do not need a visa. So countries take these decisions. Usually there is a principle of reciprocity that if a country imposes a visa on you, you reciprocate and impose a visa. If they would like to waiver a visa requirement on your nationals, you also would do the same. And so in regard to Britain, we will be making some announcements in the coming weeks once we've properly consulted with our cabinet colleagues as to what we are going to do and how we're going to deal with that challenge. But there are many countries in SADC in particular and other African countries. SADC in particular, we have a 90-day visa waiver requirement for all SADC countries, which means that SADC nationals can enter South Africa without being in possession of a visa for 90 days in a calendar year. Now, I know many people create a complete confusion in this regard and think this is 90 days at any given point in time. Yeah. And so they come to South Africa, spend 90 days, and then go back, cross the border, and return and apply for another 90-day visa. But in actual fact, when and if we apply the law quite strictly, it is 90 days in a calendar year, which means that within 365 days, you decide how you use your 90 days.
Absolutely.
But we are going to be dealing with that too. But there are many countries we have visa waiver reciprocal agreements with, particularly on the African continent.
All right, let's leave it there, Minister. I know there's lots to talk about, but we've got to get to the sports news because I know you and I are a bit hard.